Hey guys, good morning. A little Smarter News Coffee Talk, and I'm holding this mug for a very specific reason. Today is the day in 1836 that we refer to as the Alamo. It's the day that the Alamo falls, and the defenders of the Alamo all lose their lives. It's a significant point in American history, Texas history, but American history overall. And there's some interesting themes that I was thinking about this morning about this story and how it sort of ties into the news of the day and some important American stories that we're watching right now. So just quickly, because I think a dose of American history always grounds us, and certainly this story does. You know, what's interesting about the Alamo, and I'm not from Texas, by the way, although now I consider myself, do I consider myself a Texan? I guess, am I? I don't know. Would Texans consider me a Texan? I'm not sure. But I'm married to a Texan, so I'm Texan by family. And so I was talking to Leif last night about the Alamo, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to put together a real simple card about the Alamo for Smarter News. And I discovered that that's not possible when your husband is Texan, loves Texas history, and is also former military. Not going to happen. So we had a big conversation about the Alamo that was actually very helpful. I just recently went to the Alamo for the first time. And one of the things that strikes me when I was there is that I think when you think about the Alamo, you think about Davy Crockett, obviously a famous American who lost his life on that day, March 6, 1836. But when you see the names, and it's still unknown how many defenders exactly were inside the Alamo, you understand that it wasn't just folks that looked like Davy Crockett. You had Northern, Southern, you had Black, White, you had European and Mexican. You had young, and you had those that were older, more middle-aged, or would be considered more elderly at the time. And the reason why they were at the Alamo is, and I'm just going to kind of do this in broad strokes, there was a fight for Texas independence because those that were living in Texas felt that they weren't properly represented in the Mexican government. For many years, the settlers that came to Texas were living under Mexico law because Texas was part of Mexico. And that worked out fine until it didn't. Again, this is broad strokes. The Mexican government wasn't going to give proper representation to the settlers, or so they thought. And so there was this move towards independence. And we wind up in the Alamo when some of these quote unquote Texas rebels decide to go to San Antonio, take over the Alamo as a strategic position. They realize they're going to be confronted by Mexican troops. They didn't realize it would happen so soon and such overwhelming force. And so that led to the Alamo's fall. The Alamo was important, though, because it galvanized this movement behind Texas independence. Several weeks later, the Mexican army is defeated, and those during that battle apparently said, remember the Alamo. And it's a point in American history we look back on and think this was a fight for independence. Although it's interesting, I was under the misconception that a lot of these Texians, as these Texas settlers were called, were fighting to become part of America. But Texas didn't become part of the United States of America for almost 10 years after the Alamo. So it wasn't an instant thing. It was about, again, proper representation in government and independence and liberty. These are these big themes. And so why do I think it ties into the news of the day? Here's why. One of the big stories we've been watching for now 2 years is this question about Russian collusion into American elections. And what is that really about? Like, of course, we don't want foreign entities involved in our elections. Of course. But does it matter if it's Russia or anybody? Not really. I mean, we just don't like it. Why don't we like it? Because at the core of America is this desire for proper representation, whether it's the American Revolution, proper representation against the British government, whether it's in Texas and proper representation against the Mexican government, whether it's now and whether it's our proper representation in our democracy, that when our vote is cast, it counts because we want to be properly represented. The reason why Russian collusion is coming up even in today's news cycle is that President Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, is returning to Capitol Hill. It's going to be his 4th day of testimony. He's done a series of different appearances, if you will, between in public and also behind closed doors. Today will be his final day of testimony. He's supposed to be heading to prison today, but a judge allowed him to stay out for a few more weeks to provide this testimony. Of course, he's a flawed person, like all of us are, but his flaws have been picked apart in public. And part of the reason why he's a flawed witness is because he lied to Congress, and that's part of the reason he's going to prison. So there are those that say, well, you can't believe him. And there are those that say, well, wait a minute. He worked with President Trump for a better part of a decade, and he might have something to add. Big thing I want you to know about the Michael Cohen testimony and why I'm treading very carefully with this story. The allegations that he's lobbying against the president that are both about and ethical or even potential illegal business dealings or actions are just that at this time. They're allegations. And there's no instant way to fact check them. And that sort of bothers me because anyone, anytime can throw allegations at anyone. And although those allegations are serious and important, we want to make sure we can put them in the proper context, and we can't always do that in this particular situation. Also, Michael Cohen's testimony, similar to the special counsel investigation, could have two different outcomes. It could mean a lot. It could change the course of the American presidency as we know it. Or it can mean nothing, and nothing really comes of it. And both of those options are possible. So right now, Michael Cohen's testimony is important for all of us to know about because his testimony so far has sparked, and this is just recently, sparked multiple investigations by Democrats in the House of Representatives into the president for multiple different reasons. Because the House of Representatives has investigative power, subpoena power, this is important for us to know. These are our representatives, even if they're not the ones that are representing us in our state. So I want you to know that that's happening. That takes time. It takes money. So that's what's taking place. So we'll watch his testimony today on that. But again, he had said that he did not see collusion between the Russians and the president when it came to the election. He has said that. He's been on the record for that. But we'll see. We'll see what else we learn today. Final thing I want you just to know about, this is sort of an interesting innovation that I just kind of caught my attention. Depression is something, a big news story in general, but the treatment for depression has been something that we talked a lot about in the news for different innovations, different treatments, different inventions. And the FDA that's my son with his machine gun. Don't worry, it's fine. It's not real. The FDA just recently approved a drug by Johnson & Johnson that's a nasal spray that's an antidepressant that uses a chemical cousin to ketamine, which is controversial. Ketamine has been used for years for all sorts of different things. Veterinarians use ketamine. Doctors use ketamine legally. It can be used as a recreational drug. Right now, the nasal spray is only available under physician supervision, so it's not like you're walking around like using nasal spray. It's also not supposed to be for anyone just anyone. You have to have tried traditional established antidepressants and have to show that they don't work. Most antidepressants are derivatives of Prozac, so they're down like one channel. So this kind of gets us into a different area of like, well, what could this treatment look like eventually? Is it safe? It's sort of, again, kind of an interesting thing just to have in your radar. I thought it was like, I never thought about it, and I didn't think about it as a nasal spray to be a treatment. So there you go. Kind of interesting thing to know about today. But we'll kind of come full circle. Remember the Alamo, by the way, come and take it, although that's a popular cry in Texas in general. That did not happen at the Alamo. That happened in Gonzales, Texas, which is a separate story, which deserves its own time. Speaking of Texas, just really quick, I have an exciting announcement. Next week at this time, we'll be headed, SmartHER News, to South by Southwest. We've been invited to present there. South by Southwest is this huge conference, music, film, innovations, tech conference, and we're going to do a little presentation about SmartHER News on Wednesday, so I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about it and totally nervous and terrified. So it should work out well. We have about a week. So we'll be fine. We'll prepare. So if you're going to South by Southwest, come check us out. Wednesday, 11 o'clock is when our session will be. And so that's exciting. Texas leading the way in a lot of different ways. I guess it's technology now, baby, in Austin. And again, the fight for independence and free thinking, the ability for creativity is strong, not only in Texas, but all over America, as I'm sure you know. All right, guys, have a great day, have a great Wednesday, and I'll talk to you later.